Oh,
Hi.
hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of PB&J. I'm Jay, that's the other Jay of the Hayes family, that's Jaden, my little sister. Jaden, it's been a while since you've been on the podcast. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you today?
Oh, I'm so good. So glad that you're with us today. It is a pleasure and an honor. So Jaden, on PB&J this month we are talking about mental health. We're talking about things of God and how they can relate to mental health. And those kind of things. So I thought no better person to talk about today's topic than you, which maybe it's an insult or maybe you'll see it as a blessing, we'll see. But I think it's important that when we do these kind of things, Jay, that we are able to speak from a place of experience rather than trying to empathize with something that we don't understand.
Okay.
So today's topic, Jaden, is loneliness.
Okay.
Right? Look, it's a very crippling part of mental health, is feeling all alone. Feeling like the walls are closing in, that there's no light at the end of the tunnel, however you want to put it. And it can be kind of scary, it can be kind of daunting to the people. And so with that being said, right, we have to find a way to see what the Word says and understand that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. Maybe even a light above you in the tunnel. That kind of stuff. So Jaden, before we get into the Bible verses that I chose for this, as well as some of the questions I have for you. What does loneliness kind of mean to you? How would you describe it? Maybe in your own words.
Well, I think that loneliness is when you feel like you don't have anyone to rely on, whether that is friends, family, a romantic partner, where it feels like you are isolated. When I think of loneliness, I think of isolation because you feel like you are an island and that there's not anyone that you can reach out to for help or for guidance or for comfort. And so I think that's probably the best way that I would describe loneliness.
Yes.
is being an island and being in isolation.
Sure. It's good. So Jaden, on PB&J, more recently than the last time you were on, we've been really focusing on bringing the Word to the people who may not know where to look. So for some of these, I've chosen about 6 verses that have to do with God being there for us. And we're going to talk about why that matters here in a minute. But I'm going to read through them, Jaden, just real quick. Okay. So Isaiah 41, verse 10. So chapter 41, verse 10 of Isaiah. Fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you, I will help you, and I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. In Psalm 27:10, for my father and my mother have forsaken me, but the Lord will take me in. In Matthew, chapter 28, verse 20, teaching them to observe all that I have commanded you, and behold, I am with you always to the end of the age. In Deuteronomy, chapter 31, verse 6, be strong and courageous. Do not fear or be in dread of them, for it is the Lord your God who goes with you. He will not leave you nor forsake you. In 1 Peter 5:7, casting all your anxieties on him because he cares for you. And then Psalm 147, verse 3, he heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds. So, my first question, Jaden, I guess my second question, my first official question for this episode is, what is the difference between being alone and being lonely?
This is a very good question for me. Because this is my wheelhouse right here. So the difference between being alone and loneliness is honestly a state of mind. So for those of you listening and watching, so I am alone a lot of the time. I live by myself. I am up all hours of the night, so it's not like I go home and go to bed after going to work. Like I'm awake a lot. I'm alone with my thoughts in my own space quite often. I like to travel alone, so sometimes I will be in foreign countries all alone. And it's literally just me, myself, I, and my thoughts. And that is being alone. I feel like being alone, when I'm doing those things, I'm just like, yeah, I'm enjoying my company. I'm doing, going shopping, running errands, traveling, reading alone. Okay, so that is just like, when it's things like that, I'm like, yeah, this is just something I'm doing alone. And then loneliness is kind of that mind shift of when I recognize that I am doing something by myself and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I wish I had somebody here with me. Mm-hmm. That's when loneliness starts to creep in, when I'm like, oh, like, this is something I'm doing that I wish I wasn't doing alone. So, like, now I'm lonely. And sometimes, though, I will say that you can feel lonely even if you've got a bunch of people around you, even if you have friends. I have a very wonderful friend support system. My family's wonderful. I have very close relationships with all of them. But sometimes, like, if I'm going through something that maybe I feel like they can't relate to, or if I feel like I'm bothering them, and I know that they're busy with their own things, sometimes I can start to feel lonely in a room full of people who love me and that I shouldn't feel lonely in. But sometimes it's that mindset shift of, well, this is something I'm carrying alone, this is something I'm going through alone. Like, I don't want to bother them, I don't want to put this on them, I know that they're busy. Or it can be something as simple as, like, when I text my friends and I'm like, hey, do you want to go run this errand? And they say no, and I'm like, oh, like, there's that, like, feeling of, like, oh, this is something I didn't want to do alone, now I have to. That's when I start to feel lonely, as opposed to just doing something alone.
And so, Jaden, one of the most important things you just said there, right, is that when it feels like nobody else is there, nobody wants to help, nobody is there to help, people are busy. And again, people only know what they know. I think that's the big thing for loneliness, is people may not even know they're making you feel that way. And not that they would do it intentionally. I mean, I guess maybe if they already need to find better friends
right.
or family. But it's those moments where we feel like there is no one else around. That is where God comes in and works the best. Guess what? He's never too busy. He's never
Amen.
Too far away. But we have to be vulnerable and honest enough to meet him, because he meets us where we are. And I know that's an easy concept to say as a pastor's kid or
yes.
as a host of a podcast about the things of God, but when we struggle with these things, and for those of you who may struggle with finding God in the quiet places of your life, he's in the Word. Crack open the good book, right? But he's also in your prayers. And we talked about it last week. There is no such thing as a good prayer or a bad prayer, right? There is no length that you need to feel close to him. He doesn't ask for a monologue for, like the opening of SNL or a message, right? He just wants your heart. And God knows where you are in your prayer life. He knows if you can only get out a few words before the tears start flowing. Another thing that really helps is playing that worship music. Finding that time to just be alone and be in his presence. Those kind of things help. But I think another thing for people to think about, since you are not only a believer, but you've also been through many different stages of life, what effect has loneliness, or does loneliness have on you?
Oh, that's a really good question. So I will say that it never really bothered me. Like, I've gone through waves where I'm like, this feels crippling, and then waves where I'm like, okay, this is fine. Like, I'm kind of a lone wolf in certain things. So it's kind of ebbed and flowed. Like, when I was younger, like, I wanted to feel like I always belonged to something, and so then when I didn't, or I like struggled to find friend groups or all that stuff, that's when I felt like I was lonely. And now that I am older, I know that that's just part of growing up. And like, that felt like, oh, I want a group, I want to be a part of that, I want to have that. And so like, that felt like almost like a disadvantage in my life. And then as I kind of got older, I was like, okay, like, I'm fine being alone, because look at all these cool things that I can do alone. And I really emphasized being solo, flying solo on a lot of things. And then as I've kind of continued to get older, now I always look around at my mom and dad. You're married and you've got your own family, and I don't have that, and I have no prospects of that. And I'm watching all my friends, start to settle down and all those things. And now loneliness for me isn't always like a friendship thing now. It is a relationship thing most of the time now. But it feels like I'm starting to feel like where I'm like, oh my gosh, like, is it just going to be me? And if it is, like, am I going to be okay with this? So for me, the effect that loneliness has on me now is I am really at a crossroads of my life of trying to figure out if it just is me. If for the rest of my life, I've got my family, I've got my friends, but they all have their own units and their own people, am I going to be okay being alone? And like, having that mindset that it is okay for me to be alone. I've got friends and family, but I don't have, like, my person or my, like that constant where you're not lonely. Am I going to be okay with that? So it catches me at certain times. It in my life, like sometimes I'm like, okay, yeah, like I'm fine, like I'm probably the best person for me to be with if I have to be alone. I don't mind spending time with myself, but then there are other times where like I'll be sitting there with the family and I'm like looking around, I'm like, man, I really wish that I had, like, so it comes and goes. So like today I might be like, oh, I'm totally fine being alone, vibing, I can do this for the rest of my life. And then there are other times where I'm like, oh, wow, I'm in a room full of people and I've never felt more alone than I do right now. So it changes, and I'm sure that that's part of being in your 20s. I'm sure that's part of, continuing to develop as a human being and as a Christian and as all of those things. But I will say that because of how God made me and what he did when he created me, that if that does happen, I do know that in my heart of hearts, that if it's me and JC for the rest of it, I'll be fine, and I will live a very good, happy, healthy, long life that when I get to the end, I will be like, this was a good time. So. Yeah,
so for those of you who don't know, Jaden says that before announcements every Sunday at the Grafton to Work Family Church, that it's announcement time every time's favorite service because it's me and JC. How you doing, my man? But Jaden, it goes right into two of the last three questions that I have, right? So we live in a society, and those of you listening understand, Jaden, you understand, we live in a society where being single is almost like a disease rather than being seen as the kind of blessing that it can be. The Apostle Paul, he was not married. He was a single, just doing the Lord's work. And he had some thoughts on marriage and on relationships. And while this isn't about relationships, I think it's important because loneliness often gets looped in with relationships, both romantic and platonic. And we can sit here and talk about friendships and reason, season, and a lifetime. But the question is a season of singleness necessary? I will speak on this for you, Jaden, since you don't have to bring it up. I struggled a lot with the idea of looking like a loser, quote unquote. For those of you not watching on YouTube, I put air quotes there, but for not being in a relationship. I think a lot of my status banked on the idea of having an arm candy per se, and I know that doesn't sound the best probably through the airwaves, but I'm trying to describe it to you so you understand that my mindset was not necessarily about finding a godly relationship. The Bible talks about being unevenly yoked with those around you and the dangers that can be. I believe the wording is, what can the righteous get from the ungodly? I think is exactly what it says. But I do think that there is a time and a purpose for being single. And when we try to force ourselves to not be single or quote-unquote alone, that is when we start falling. That's when the enemy can start using our desperation against us, and we get into relationships that we shouldn't be in. We get consequences that we shouldn't have gotten, or we're too early to get. And obviously those of you who know that I have a son out of wedlock, and there's no disrespect to his mother, we were both young and crazy at the time, but in that time of my life, I should have been much more focused on me, much more focused on things of God and working on what it looks like to be a father that my son can look up to, and more so a boyfriend or fiance or husband that my partner can look up to, right? But we get so stigmatized, right, with this idea of relationships. We want romantic relationships. It's in the media, it's in the movies, right? The boy meets the girl meets the boy. All that stuff is in there. But Jaden, my question to you is, I answered the first question for you. You're welcome. My next question though is, what weight, and I'm talking about like the weight of the world, right? What weight does relationship play in our day-to-day lives and your day-to-day life? You can answer either way you want. And has it and does it become an idol for us, where we kind of put that stuff over what God is looking for?
So this is, both of those questions are going to kind of tie into each other because I think that they do go hand in hand. So for those of you who don't know, one of my jobs is I am an event planner, and in the area that I live in, I do a lot of weddings. So I am surrounded constantly by couples falling in love, planning their special day, and I get to help with that. And I am someone that I cry at every single first dance. And I'm now at the age, I'm 24, so a lot of my friends are starting to settle down, get married, get engaged, start their new families. And I'm also a part of that because, I'm friends with them. So the weight of the idea of a relationship and the idea of having somebody is very, in my face all of the time. It's unless I am at home alone by myself and not thinking about it, it's in my face. So there's always kind of that, hey, this is something that you don't have, or hey, this is something that is not ready for you yet, or you are not ready for it yet. And so the weight of it is almost always there in my day-to-day with what I'm doing. Now, I will say, because as someone who, like I just said, I'm 24, I'm closer to 25 than 24 at this point, as someone who has been in a relationship for a total of 3 months out of my entire life, it's one of those things that I have learned that I am becoming a whole person by myself. And that's not to say, because no man is an island, and I actually, one of my biggest prayers is that God will bring my person to me, because I do want to get married someday. But in that meantime, this kind of goes back to that thing of, is a season of singleness necessary? Well, when it's been a life of singleness, it's one of those things where you have to think about, what do I need to be doing right now? What does God have for me right now? Because if I look at all of my friends right now, I'm like, okay, where is my person? Time for me to plan a wedding. I want to be doing that, through jobs and through, my friends. But there are so many things that God has done with me and done through me, while I've been single, that, when I pause to think about it, from the different lens, I am a person who is constantly trying new things, meeting new people, helping others, learning more about myself, developing my relationship with Christ, seeing the world, like I said, trying new things, all of those things. And a lot of my friends who are in relationships are not doing that yet. That'll come for them later. They'll eventually, we all do everything in life most of the time. So my timeline that God has me on is just a little bit different than them. It doesn't mean that it's the wrong timeline, because if it's God's timeline, it's the right one. And it can become something, we always want what we don't have. That's human nature. We always, you find that the girls who have curly hair want straight hair. The girls who have straight hair want curly hair. Those who are, married with 2 kids want to go travel the world. Those who are traveling the world want to settle down with family. We always want what we don't have. And so when you can make those things an idol per se of this is what I want, this is because I don't have it, I have all these things, this is the one thing I don't have, so I'm going to put this on a pedestal, and nothing else matters until I have this. But then you get it, and then what? Mm-hmm. So there's always going to be more, because that's life. There's always something new. But if you put it on a pedestal, you can get lost in all the amazing things that you're doing. I'm in a book club, and we're reading a book about a man who was given 6 months to live. And this whole book is about how do you live a life that when you get to the end of it, you say, this was a good life. And part of it is, you make your list of your goals and your dreams, and then you work to achieve them. And just, if you have a list of 6 goals and you only focus on one, when you get to the end, you're going to be like, wait, what was I doing in that meantime? I was chasing this for so long. What have I been doing in that meantime? Yeah. And so I think that can apply to this, because, if I only focused and made being in a relationship an idol, and I do find myself, getting into those ruts where I'm like, oh my gosh, nothing matters because I don't have a person, or nothing matters because all my friends are busy, nothing matters because my friends didn't invite me to this, nothing matters because, my mom and dad are 30 years of marriage and my brother's starting his family. I do get into ruts of that, but then I have to remind myself in my time of reflection with God how many amazing things that I have done that he put in me and things that I was supposed to do, and I'm still living what he has written for me.
Amen.
So it's one of those things where, what do I think that it would be fun to travel, explore, and create things with another person? Yes, but my time will come for that. Your time will come for that. But in the meantime, don't neglect the other things that God has written in your story because you're so focused on the one thing that you don't have. And also, because I know that this whole thing is about, mental health this entire month, you also have to remember that as humans, we are going to fall into those ruts where it feels debilitating to not have someone, especially I live in the Midwest, so winters are brutal here. So would I love nothing more than to be watching a movie on the couch with the love of my life? Yes, of course I would. But also, you have to, during those times, get in the Word, pray, spend time with God, because that is a relationship, like Justice said, that will be with you forever. That's a relationship that follows you no matter where you go. And as someone who I have struggled with mental health, and it is something that I struggle with, to this day, when I find myself going down a path where it gets that tunnel, where I'm like, wait, where did the light go? You got to take a few steps back and you got to pull Jesus into it. You got to pull God into it. You got to pull out your Bible. You got to pull out your worship music and your prayer, because without it, then you just find yourself in the tunnel, in a spiral, in a rut, where you feel like nobody's there for me. I'm lonely. This is horrible. But we're never really lonely if we've got God.
Amen. Amen. No, that's good. That was great. Thank you, Jaden, for all of that.
You're welcome.
There is, there is something to be said about relationships, and I think there is something to be said about the desire for relationships. I think God made us social beings on purpose. That's how His Word gets spread. That's how the gospel gets spread. That's how miracles work. And we all have our gifts, but the enemy, like we talked about last week with sin, the enemy is going to use your desperation, your desire against you. That is what he does best. And so you have to watch what you say, because if you start echoing what he's saying to you, you will make that your reality. And I know that sounds super religious and sounds super crazy to some of you, but that's real. If you are sitting there and you're listening to him saying you're never going to be good enough, you're never going to be pretty enough, you're never going to be at the right weight, you're never going to be at the right juncture in life to be taken as serious as you want to be in a relationship, that is going to be your reality. We have to remember that God has an idea and has a plan for what your life looks like. And while we all maybe want that companionship that Jaden talked about, sometimes that's not in the cards either. Sometimes you are going to be used strictly for the glorification of the kingdom, and you may just have a lot of friendships and a lot of close bonds that other people wish they had. There are people who are married for 30, 40, 50 years, have no friends, only have their spouse, and that's not even that great of a relationship, right? But the other thing about it is the walls and the weight of loneliness can get tight and it can get heavy. Like I said at the beginning, the room can get very dark. The heartbeat sounds a lot louder, right, in your chest. But for those of you struggling with loneliness, I want you to remember exactly what Jesus said in Matthew 28 when he was talking to the disciples, but it's true for us too. And I behold, I am with you always to the end of the age. No matter how alone you feel, no matter how introverted or extroverted you are, no matter how many friends you have or don't have, no matter how many relationships you've been in or not been in, right? Jesus is always there. And he is always waiting with his 2 scarred hands and his 2 scarred feet and the sacrifice he made for us. He is right there for you. That is the purpose of the cross, is for us to have a relationship with the Father, the Son, and have the Holy Spirit inside of us. And so I don't want anybody to forget that. And I know that sounds so easy sitting here behind a microphone. But as Jaden alluded to, I have felt lonely in the biggest parties. I felt lonely in the smallest rooms. I have felt lonely with the praise of the world. I have felt lonely with the ridicule of those closest to me, or from those closest to me. And the one constant has always been God. And you have to find your way to feel His presence. Some of us, that's reading. You love reading. I encourage you to read the Word. I encourage you to look up some scriptures about what you're going through. And read, like I always tell you guys, read the before and after, read the context of what's going on. There are so many stories in the Bible of people feeling alone. Elijah felt alone. Daniel felt alone. David felt alone. David wrote a whole, 100 and something chapters of feeling alone. Solomon in Ecclesiastes, he wrote about being alone. Read. There are a plethora of songs out there about the loneliness that we can feel and how God is right there with us, right? Sing it. If you don't want to sing it, hum it. If you don't want to hum it, just let it embrace you. Listen to those songs on the way to work. Listen to them while you're at the gym. I know that sounds crazy. And you want the hype music for the gym, but I'm telling you, some of my best workouts have been with worship music in my ears.
You could also do Toby Mac.
You could also do Toby Mac. You could.
Royal Taylor, sorry.
Yeah, shout out to Torrin and the boys. But those things are what sets us apart as believers, sets us apart. Other people don't get to have that. And it's through these experiences that you can then witness to those people and shed a light and be a light into this world like we're called to in the book of Matthew. So, Jaden, I appreciate you being open on the podcast. Thanks for coming on. It's always a pleasure to have you. You'd think I'd have you on here more so I could talk less. It is awesome to have that. But for those of you listening, look, we care about you. Thank you for going on this journey with us through mental health in October. It's a topic that's very important to me, and obviously, as you know, to Jaden as well. But until next week, we pray that you go and grow with purpose. Peace.